Required skills to become a criminal investigator. Introduction to the module. In this module, we will learn how to think like a criminal investigator. This module will also shed some light on the pathway to becoming a successful criminal investigator. Topics to be covered. Definition of a crime investigator. Roles and responsibilities of a criminal investigator. Necessary skills of a criminal investigator. Thinking process. Decision making. The investigative mindset. The code of ethics. The pathway to becoming a criminal investigator. Career as a criminal investigator. What is a criminal investigation? Criminal investigation is a multifaceted problem-solving challenge. When a cop arrives at a crime scene, he or she is often expected to make split-second decisions. Such decisions may often involve life and death, based on little information in a dynamic world of unfolding events. Following the resolution of a felony prosecution, the investigator is responsible for maintaining the crime scene, gathering information, and developing an investigative plan that can lead to the development of adequate grounds to identify and apprehend the perpetrator or suspects. Via training and practice, police officers learn investigating procedures to develop enforcement techniques and prioritize solutions in order to meet these challenges. Roles and responsibilities of a criminal investigator. Responsibilities include: investigate complex criminal acts and other violations of local, federal, or state law in great detail. Gather, examine, and store facts. Direct crime scene technicians and other law enforcement staff. Make rational judgments and conclusions that lead to prosecution using deductive reasoning and interpretation. Prepare thorough case studies, as well as register and preserve documents. Arrest suspects as required after coordinating search and arrest warrants. In order to win a conviction, testify in court about case facts and findings. As required, participate in ongoing training and development. Maintain complete anonymity. Necessary skills of a criminal investigator. Thinking process. The criminal investigation is a multifaceted, problem-solving challenge. Criminal investigation is a collection of cognitive abilities as well as a set of task abilities. These abilities must be actively recognized and developed to the point where they are voluntarily involved to go through the criminal problem-solving system in order to become a competent investigator. As we're all conditioned to be considerably less formal and evidence-oriented in our everyday thinking, it can be challenging to incorporate trained thinking and responding into our own repertoires. An officer is often required to rapidly make critical decisions that may sometimes involve life and death situation. He sometimes needs to base his decision on limited information in a dynamic environment of active and still evolving events. After a criminal event is over, the investigator is expected to preserve the crime scene, collect the evidence, and devise an investigative plan that will lead to the forming of reasonable grounds to identify and arrest the person or persons responsible for the crime. To meet these challenges, police investigators, through training and experience, learn investigative processes to develop investigative plans and prioritize responses. Decision-making. The process of discovering, evaluating, and deciding the veracity of information in the function of a police investigator is diametrically opposed to that of regular people, and this distinction is crucial. It is no longer adequate to employ the tactics that regular people utilize on a daily basis as an investigator. Instead, investigators must critically evaluate all of the materials they come across, since every inquiry is a responsible process in which the investigator is not just deciding on the authenticity and veracity of the material for personal confirmation of a belief. Rather, the police investigator is accountable and authorized by law to make decisions that may have a substantial impact on the lives of people under investigation as well as crime victims. The criminal investigator's interpretation of information and evidence commonly requires answers to many questions that can lead to critical decisions, actions, and outcomes, such as: what must be done to protect the life and safety of persons? Should force, up to and including deadly force, be used to resolve a situation? Who will become the focus or subject of a criminal investigation? What is the best plan to apprehend the person or persons responsible for a criminal act? A criminal investigator may also find out the answers to the followings. Will someone be subjected to a search of their person or of their home? Will someone be subjected to detention or arrest and questioning for a criminal act? Will someone have a criminal charge sworn against them? Will someone be subjected to a criminal trial? Will someone's liberty as a free person be at risk? Will justice be served? Will the community be protected? Significant to these possible outcomes, the investigator must always be ready to explain their thinking and actions to the court. For a police investigator, gathering and evaluating evidence at a level will be acceptable to the criminal justice system if they have both task and cognitive abilities. Obviously, no one can maintain a continual state of awareness in which they are constantly evaluating, recording, and establishing the authenticity of every item of information they come across. When a police investigator is on duty, however, this is frequently required. This requires an intentional process of being cognitively engaged and switched on to a more alert level of information gathering, evaluation, and validation while on duty for a police investigator. For both tactical and strategic investigative responses, a police investigator must understand this higher and more accountable level of analytical thinking. The police investigator who has been switched on must respond appropriately to situations where they must protect the life and safety of persons, gather the maximum available evidence and information from people and locations, recognize the possible offense or offenses being depicted by the fact pattern, preserve and document all evidence and information, critically analyze all available information and evidence, develop an effective investigative plan strategically by developing reasonable grounds to either identify and arrest those responsible for criminal acts or eliminate those who are wrongfully suspected. The investigative mindset. When we speak about the investigative mentality, we are referring to self-awareness as well as organizational awareness in order to avoid terrible effects. This understanding, once understood and exercised, can serve as a safeguard against harmful investigative tactics. As we proceed towards learning the investigative thinking process, keep in mind that investigative thinking is disciplined thinking, and investigators must be consciously aware of and consciously control their thinking. The investigation is a process of being intentionally engaged at a high level of analytical thinking. This thinking process is strategically focused, prioritizing investigative plans and actions to achieve outcomes. The Code of Ethics. Officials in law enforcement are required to follow a code of ethics that outlines general standards for ethical conduct among officers. Each officer's personality should incorporate the code of ethics, and officers should learn to live and think ethically in order to avoid contradictory behaviors. Law enforcement agencies use codes of ethics as teaching aids to help officers identify principles and expectations of conduct. Some countries implement or draft a national code of ethics that all law enforcement officers must follow, while others encourage local police departments to develop their own. In April 2014, the United Kingdom, for example, adopted a national code of ethics. The pathway to becoming a criminal investigator. For many people, the idea of being an investigator is based on what they see, hear, and read in the media, movies, TV, and books. The truth is, reasonable investigation and real-life investigators are unlikely to make a captivating fictional script. Professional investigators and competent investigation is about the tedious processes of fact-finding and sorting through evidence and information. Sometimes, new police investigators are, at first, deluded by fictional representations, only to find out, by experience, that the actual job, although having moments of action, satisfaction, and excitement, is more about hard work and deliberate attention to detail. Certain personal traits tend to be found in good investigators. Among these traits are being passionate about following the facts to discover the truth, to contribute to the process of justice. being detail-oriented and observant of the facts and the timelines of events. Being a flexible thinker, avoiding tunnel vision, and is capable of concurrently examining alternate theories. Being patient and capable of maintaining a long-term commitment to a conclusion. Being tenacious and not allowing setbacks and false leads to deter continued efforts. Being knowledgeable and skilled at the tasks, process, and procedure while respecting legal authorities and the limitations to take action. Being self-aware of bias and intuitive responses and seeking evidence to support gut feelings. Being trained in the processes of critical thinking that provide reliable analysis of evidence that can later be described and articulated in reports and court testimony. Considering this list of traits, we can appreciate those good investigators with particular attitudes, aptitudes, and intentional thinking processes. Career as a criminal investigator. Although many people start their careers as police officers, it is not a requirement. Graduates can also apply for the Police Now National Criminal Investigator Program, which offers 2 years of training in the basic skills and leadership qualities needed for this work. You must have earned at least a 2:2 in your undergraduate study, or non-UK equivalent, to be eligible. The first phase in the program is the Criminal Investigator Academy, a 12-week residential academy that combines classroom and outdoor training. To advance, you must first pass the National Investigators Exam, NIE. The remaining experience consists of pre-service training, immersion training, where you join a force in uniform to exercise your basic policing abilities, and a series of rotations in which you can receive accelerated training on how to solve serious and complex crimes. Summary. From this module, we have learnt: a good investigator needs to be conscious of his or her thinking, and that thinking needs to be an intentional process. After a criminal event is over, the investigator is expected to preserve the crime scene, collect the evidence, and devise an investigative plan that will lead to the forming of reasonable grounds to identify and arrest the person or persons responsible for the crime. The switched-on police investigator must respond appropriately to situations where they must protect the life and safety of persons. Graduates can take an alternative training route through the Police Now National Criminal Investigator Program, which develops the key skills and leadership qualities needed for the role over 2 years.